Mari. Dire. Da. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, good afternoon. I think we made it, so we made it. Thank you. And friend, we made it. And I'm happy to see so many of you with us now that we have finished the long trek from the capital of the United States to what is in some way the capital of the world, the United Nations in New York City. Those of you who walked all the way can take pride in the great distance you have traveled. Those of you who joined us for part of the way can also take pride in making a solid and important contribution to our campaign in increase awareness of the just cause of the Tibetan people. I think all of you too can now appreciate a little bit what it has been like for many Tibetans over the years who have trekked over long distance and high mountain passes to reach solemn and find the freedom which has been denied to them in their own country. Thank you so much for your food, housing, car horns, victory signs, kind and supportive words, and financial assistance. We could not have made it there without all of you. It is fitting that we are gathered here before the United Nations. Over 30 years ago, the Tibetan question was put on the United Nations agenda. Is one of the most pressing cases of injustice in the world, one that needed urgent attention. The International Commission of Justice, which has acted in an advisory capacity to the United Nations, and so far is to call what had been happening in Tibet genocide. However, the sad fact is United Nations' ability to live up to its ideals will be measured by history, and up to now the record is not good. Still, we hope that the United Nations may yet show itself worthy of the hopes that so many of the world's peoples have placed in it. In the last few years, the importance of the Tibetan question to world peace and human dignity has become a central element in the changing vision of world peace. This was made quite clear when the Nobel Peace Prize Committee decided to award the 1989 prize to His Holiness the Dalai Lama in recognition of his efforts for peace and his non-violent struggle to win the liberation of Tibet. More and more people have realized that the world situation following the end of the Cold War presents and peoples with the opportunity to create a new order based on mutual respect for our inherent dignity as peoples. And this means that the commitment to the basic human rights of all peoples must extend to oppressed as well as to the powerful, to the Tibetans as much as to anyone else. By being here today, you are helping to make this point clear to many who do not remember or were too young to have experienced the dramatic and tragic events of China's invasion of Tibet, as well as Tibet's violent attempts in 1950s and 1960s, and up to the present to resist China's tyranny. I speak to you today simply as one Tibetan among more than 6 million. All Tibetans are equal, and I do not claim to be more worthy of speaking before you than any of my following Tibetans. But I feel that all of us should try to use whatever opportunities we might have to place before the world community the basic hope of most all Tibetans. Tibet must be independent. Tibetans want no more and no less from China than the full right to determine their own future and on this point make no mistake about what self-determination means. Tibetans, after decades of death and destruction at the hands of China, are determined that their future must be one in which Tibet is a free and independent member of the community of nations. We Tibetans must permit to fly our flag here at the United Nations. His Holiness the Dalai Lama must be allowed to speak before the United Nations. What I'm saying to you today is not the view of one Tibetan. It is the common desire of almost all Tibetans, and more importantly, it is an absolute necessity if we are to survive as a people. I must emphasize that if Tibetans are not according to their just right, including their right to an independent country, they will continue their struggle to secure this right. This means if Tibetans want to live in an independent Tibet, then they shall live in an independent Tibet. Anything less will simply be an agreement for further suffering, much as was the case with the 17-point agreement of 1951. This agreement was forcibly signed between Tibet and China. Again, Tibetans will be forced to continue their struggle until they attain their just right to self-determination and freedom. Remember, the United Nations clearly guaranteed this right to Tibetans in its 1961 resolution on Tibet. China has said that everything between Tibet and China is negotiable except for independence, which is out of the question. Ordinary Tibetans do not accept this. Tibetans say that everything between Tibet and China is negotiable except for independence, which must be in the fundamental prerequisite for any solution to the Tibetan question. Autonomy for Tibet is a part of China is out of the question. Independence for Tibet is neither unrealistic nor extreme. The question of what is realistic and unrealistic is simply a matter of our determination to stand by the Tibetan people inside Tibet, who are firm in the determination to safeguard the Tibetans, and their supporters make our national hopes for independence known and firm. As for the idea that the independence for Tibet is extreme, I will simply point out that the Tibetans are nowhere demanding vengeance for the horrors that China has inflicted on opposition. To deal with China is an independent party for any agreement to have any validity. Without the independence, we will only see continuation of the same horrors that have been occurring in Tibet over the last 4 decades. Even as we speak Tibetan, political prisoners are being killed and they are suffering the torture and brutality that is common in Chinese-run prisons. Even the 7-year-old pension lama, an innocent child, has been taken from his homeland, placed in Chinese confinement with his family simply for being recognized by the Dalai Lama and all the Tibetans is the incarnation of one of our great religious figures. It is important, therefore, that we keep up our campaign for Tibet's independence and that we insist that the United Nations take a strong action to help Tibet regain its independence. We insisted that the United Nations send investigators to Tibet to examine in detail the human rights situation there and to publicly and strongly condemn all violations of relevant articles of the International Declaration of Human Rights that are found there. We insist that the United Nations grant observer status to the Tibetan government headed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The various resolutions on Tibet that it has adopted, finally, we insist the United Nations demand the China release Gindan Chijinima, the real pension lama, his family, and everyone else involved in his discovery. The United Nations must force China to guarantee their safety. As many of you know, today is Gindan Chijinima's 7th birthday. It is unbelievable, but almost a year has passed since Gindan Chijinima disappeared from this planet. And we still do not know where he is. How can the free world let this happen? Are our leaders afraid of China? Are they more interested in money than human rights? Please ask them these questions. Gindan Chijinima is the youngest political prisoner in the world. China's treatment of all of the individuals involved in his disappearance is disgusting, and it clearly demonstrates the extreme cruelty of this government. We must all fight hard to Gindan Chijinima's safety and release. Please educate the people about his situation, especially your children, and write the United Nations, your government officials, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, demanding his release. Now I would like to invite you to join me in a few moments of silence in recognition of the Gindan Chijinima, the missing 7-year-old birthday boy who is true pension lama. Thank you very much, thank you. I would again like to express my deep appreciation to all of you who have come here today and those of you who helped us along the way. With your continued help and your belief in the justice of our cause, I know we shall ultimately triumph. We will one day soon see the fulfillment of hopes and desires of all Tibetans for the independence for their homeland. Someday in the near future, I want to stand here with you and hoist the beautiful green, blue, yellow, white, and red snow line found on the Tibetan flag. Independence for Tibet! Independence for Tibet! Independence for Tibet! Independence for Tibet! Independence for Tibet! China out of Tibet! China out of Tibet! China out of Tibet! Purge yellow! Purge yellow! Purge yellow! Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Get up and then start the process all over again. So please be kind enough to form two lines so that we can start the prostration.
Can we form the line as far as we can? Where? Please move to the left-hand side.
Mentioned the Turkistan groups in the way. Turkistan groups in the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, and brothers and sisters, our country, East Turkestan, was also occupied by the People's Republic of China in 1949. Our cows exactly similar of the cows of Tibet. We have to raise our voice into the free world in order to get the help of the United States and United Nations. Freedom for East Turkestan! Freedom Turkestan! Freedom for East Turkestan! Freedom for Tibet!
Please come back side.
야, 그것도 차대나, 저것도 차대나. 야, 장아, 쇼시 차대나.
Please, prostrate. Prostrate, go come back.
Hey, 150 squad.
Thank you. Please come back.
Details the extent of the most recent crackdown. Don't believe Chinese propaganda that the situation.
I will look at this morning, but you know.
That's right. We tried reaching earlier today, but we couldn't get it. Coming opportunities, we drove all night.
How is this gentleman? How are you? How about me? Yes,
Sorry about that. We tried to continue.
Do you talk to the people now? You want to keep talking?
Yes, I prepared, but everything.
No, we see here.
They cannot hold you back without necessary to that country. They are permanently expelled any kind of participation in any religious institution. The other thing that the Chinese have done is outlawed many of the traditional expected of harboring pro-Tibetan nationalist sympathies. One of the reasons for identifying them is to introduce them into Tibet for settlement. And there's also been a campaign for high-speed economic growth in Tibet, which would be fine and damn.
I held in my left hand was the one that used into my mouth. So 3 teeth were broken instantly, and the rest of the teeth were broken and shaken, and I was bleeding profusely and also became unconscious. And when I regained consciousness, I saw black all.
Needs us here to tell the world that China must now stop its torture in Tibet. Stop the torture in Tibet! Stop the torture in Tibet! Stop the torture in Tibet! Stop the torture in Tibet! Stop the killing in Tibet! Stop the killing in Tibet! Per Rong Zen! Per Rong Zen! Per Rong Zen! Per Rong Zen! Per Rong Zen! Long live Tibet! Long live Tibet! Long live the Dalai Lama! Long live the Dalai Lama! Long live the Panchen Lama! Long live the Panchen Lama! Free the Panchen Lama now! Free the Panchen Lama now! Stop the killing in Tibet! Stop the killing in Tibet! Long live Tibet! Long live Tibet! Another distinguished speaker, a man who's worked tirelessly on behalf of Tibet through Tibet House. Many of us have first encountered the issue of Tibet through the cultural riches that the Tibetans have produced through the centuries. Tibet House has worked tirelessly in a cultural and political way, because when Westerners see the value of the culture of Tibet and realize it's endangered, action must be taken. So please join me in welcoming Professor Robert Thurman of Tibet House.
So where are you going, Doug? So what, about 5-10 minutes?
Please.
So welcome everyone who walked from Washington to New York. I was just talking to Thaksin Rinpoche. He says he had a picnic every day. And he gained weight, but I don't believe it. It's a very great thing where we are very humbled by the brave demonstration of those who walked here from Washington to demonstrate the seizure and arrest of His Holiness the Panchen Rinpoche, Gendun Chökyi Nyima, who is presently the youngest political prisoner in the world. At the age of 6, he's under house arrest outside of Beijing for committing no crime except having to be reincarnated as one of the greatest lamas of Tibet, and chosen officially and technically by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in a process with which the Chinese government was thoroughly aware until the very last moment, when the Li Peng and Jiang Zemin decided to try to show Deng Xiaoping and some other old fogies that they were nastier than them. A purely internal dialogue just took the life of the parents and the young Panchen Lama and locked him away, punishing him for nothing at all. And the world accepts it, the world quietly accepts it, and nobody does anything about it. So those who walked for that and for... If we allow governments, illegal and dictatorial governments, to mistreat the people in their own country, it's only a matter of time before they want to mistreat us. It really is a major matter. I mean, here you are, a small group. We are of 100, 200 of us. The city is going about its business. What do you think the city will think if a world war...
Today, everything that we're doing here is now illegal in Tibet. One day, we will have our Independence March right down through downtown Lhasa. That day is coming. It's an honor for me at this time to introduce to you a freedom fighter, a Khampa freedom fighter, who has worked with the Tibetan Women's Association, has worked with the Tibetan support groups in the United States and throughout the world. Please join me in welcoming to the podium here, Chökyi Wandu. Representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama tells me that at this time, he, Textor Rinpoche, who's led the march from Washington, D.C., and the Venerable Palden Gyatso are now concluding their march all the way to the very door of the United Nations. Send off our Tibetan delegation to the United Nations. UN, help Tibet! UN, help Tibet! UN! Free Tibet now! Free Tibet now! Free Tibet. On March 10th this year, before the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., Tibetan demonstrators and Western supporters were joined by the freedom fighters of East Turkistan. The freedom fighters of East Turkistan have joined with the Tibetan freedom fighters, marched 8 days of this march from Washington to New York, and please join me in welcoming a representative of the Freedom and Independence Movement for East Turkestan, Mr. Anwar Yusuf Bidovalat. Thank you.
China out of Tibet! China out of Tibet! China out of Tibet! China out of Tibet! Freedom for Tibet! Freedom for Tibet! Freedom for East Turkestan! Freedom for East Turkestan! Long live Eastern Turkestan! Long live Eastern Turkestan! Long live Tibet! Long live Tibet!
Ne kılayım bu elemler derdini,
ne itey bu gazepler derdini. Ol Hudayım sorsa kazi bulup biz yetim, biz garipler erzini. Vay Allah, üzen sehi ya Rahim, ya Kerim, ya Besir, ya Semi, ya Rabbim, ya Gufur. Ya meninin sanı yok, yakşı dep koygan bilen, İçimde derdim tula, yaşı dep koygan bilen. İçimde erzim tula, yaşı dep koygan bilen. Tuşidi tüvüt buldu Turkistan'ın teşini. Ol Hudayım olmasa biz garipnin beşini. Kim kilip eytar idi biz yetimnin yeşini. Bir pay atmayşen aldı, bir pul bemeyen aldı. Ne zaman doldu bugün? Netçilap mallar birip, netçilap canlar birip. Azılap amallı saat ne zaman doldu bugün? Vay, ne zaman doldu bugün? Netçiler veyranı boldu, mınlılar kanı zar. Ne zaman doldu bugün? Netçilap mallar birip, netçilap canlar birip. Azılap amallı saat ne zaman doldu bugün? Eysem tügümez bu derdim ne? Yazsam tügümez men erzimni. Veyran kıldı bir çıraylık vatanimni. Allah'ey nimdak zaman bu, kandak zaman bu. Harap kıldı bir çıraylık makanimni. This is the famous nationalist song written by and composed by Zunan Siddiq. He passed away 2 years ago. Translation: how can I endure such insult? What can I do about this hurt? As judge, God hears the petition of us, orphans and the helpless people. Oh God, oh God, oh great God, the evil people are uncountable, even though you hear me praise them. I am discontent, even though I showed long life. I petitioned God, even though I showed long life. They stripped the jewels of East Turkestan. If God doesn't rub the heads of us helpless, who comes wipe the tears from the eyes of us orphans? I cannot finish my story. My petition is endless. They destroyed my beautiful country. They took the cities without a single ballot. They took the land without paying a penny. What has happened? What we handed over all our properties. We sacrificed our spirits. We wanted salvation. But what has happened? Ladies and gentlemen, here, first of all, as a member of more than 25 million East Turkestanis, I would like to express my support for the independence of Tibet. Secondly, I will intend to demonstrate absolute rights of independence of East Turkestan, which was also illegal occupation by the People's Republic of China since 1949. Thirdly, I appeal that United Nations General Assembly enforce all international human rights instruments, including Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the rights to self-determination of peoples under the colonial and alien domination. Finally, I urge the United Nations to recognize and support independence of East Turkestan. East Turkestan, which had remained an independent state for many centuries, was invaded by the People's Republic of China. Since then, Eastern Turkestan became a dungeon for its people. This is because China has constantly violated the human rights of the indigenous people of East Turkestan. More than 500,000 Turkestanis who bravely challenged to the Chinese authority were executed. More than 300,000 fled to neighboring countries, and hundreds of thousands of East Turkestanis have been sent to labor camps by the dictatorship of the Chinese government because those Turkestanis were condemned as Turkic nationalists, counter-revolutionary or anti-communist, and the bourgeois capitalists. They have been constantly tortured, forced to do the harshest physical labor, criticized, beaten, and insulted by the Chinese Red Guards. According to a reliable Chinese source, which is only allowed to circulate among the high-ranking officials of Chinese Communist Party, there have been more than 414 uprisings since 1949, and almost all of them intend to establish an independent East Turkestan. But all of those independent movements have been brutally crushed by China. Almost all leaders of this uprising were executed, and many participants of this uprising were sentenced for long-term imprisonment, and many were inhumanly tortured. For instance, 17 key organizers of the violent uprising occurred in Aktu County of East Turkestan in 1990 were executed in 1992. Around 30% of the participants of the 414 uprising were teenagers between the age of 12 and 18. Among the 17 victims who were executed in 1992, 2 of them were 16 years old, and their execution was implemented on their 18th birthdays. In addition, China has attempted to systematically destroy the Turkestani culture, religion, and race. China has forced the Turkestanis, who are entirely different from Chinese, speak, write, read, dress, eat, sing, dance, think, behave, and live like the Chinese, as it has done to the Tibetans. China has attempted to genocide the Turkestanis by moving more than 300,000 Han Chinese immigrants from China proper into East Turkestan each year. China has applied its birth control policy, permitting only 1 or 2 children per couple to the native people of East Turkestan against their will. In addition, thousands of women forcibly sterilized, and thousands of unborn fetus of pregnant women who failed to obey the birth control policy were forcibly aborted. And during the procedure, hundreds of women died. The indigenous Turkic people of Turkestan, consisting of largely Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, Tatars, and Iranian-speaking Tajiks, were accounted for 92% of the region's population in the 1940s. But according to the recent Chinese census, the population of East Turkestani is around 16 million, and the percentage of the indigenous population to the total population is 60%. On the contrary, the Chinese in Eastern Turkestan, numbering around 200,000 in 1940s, according to the provincial census of 1946, reached to 7 million. China has exploited the natural resource of the territory by taking all kinds of natural resources into China without paying a penny to the native people of the East Turkestan. Further, almost all of the jobs in East Turkestan were given to the Han Chinese immigrants. As a result, hundreds of thousands of Turkestanis were left homeless, and hundreds of thousands of Turkestanis have been facing tremendous hardship to run their daily life. According to the report of competent Chinese authorities, the 3 large basins of Turan, Jungwar, and Turfan are estimated to contain 1/3 of China's total oil reserves. Only in 1988 were about 700 square kilometers of oil-bearing areas and 11 oil fields found. These included 800 million tons of thin and thick oil and 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas. It is estimated that by the year 2000, confirmed oil deposits in Eastern Turkestan are expect to reach 6.5 billion tons, in addition to the 10 million cubic meters of natural gas. The Washington Post of March 20, 1994 reported that oil in China's Turan Basin, or the southern part of East Turkestan, may contain nearly as much as crude oil as Saudi Arabia. Despite the natural wealth of East Turkestan, 90% of Turkish people live under the poverty line, $50 per person annually. Further, China has devastated the environment of Turkestan by using the land as it is nuclear testing zone. Since 1964, China has been performing its nuclear tests at the Lopna region of East Turkestan. This has produced dangerously high radiation levels in certain areas. The destruction of the environment of East Turkestan wrought by the force of pollution is immeasurable. There are no official figures on the number of nuclear victims in Eastern Turkestan, but it has been reported by the residents in the various parts of the country that more than 200,000 deaths have been caused by radioactive fallout since 1964. It has been reported that 10% of the population around Lopnur suffer from cancer, and many babies have been born with horrible deformities. The tragedy is compounded by the pollution of drinking water, animals, and the foodstuffs, and the polluted districts bordering the nuclear test site do not even receive elementary medical aid. In 1988, it was reported that within and around the nuclear testing center, there were 20,000 deformed children, and that the rate of cancer was much higher than in other parts of China. Most of the disease in East Turkestan were directly caused by the nuclear radiation of China's nuclear testing at the Lopnur region. There have been 44 nuclear tests in the Lopnur region in Eastern Turkestan since 1964. China is the only nuclear power still conducting tests, though the United States, Russia, France, and Britain have all suspended their testing for the time being. As further evidence of the Chinese draining the Turkestani homeland dry of its resource, the Chinese have already wiped out most of the animals, including dogs and cats, catching them for earning money and food. Since 1980, more than 3 million unemployed Chinese immigrants have been put into Eastern Turkestan for hunting, gold mining, and digging for medical herbs. This has been also catastrophic for the environment of East Turkestan. Ecological destruction reached its peak since communist Chinese invasion of East Turkestan. In our opinion, environmental destruction is the most inhuman treatment in torturing and killing human beings and all other creatures as well. This issue should become the focus of international attention, just as China's violation of the environmental rights of the indigenous people of East Turkestan and China's violation of human rights in general should become the focus of international attention. But until today, perhaps nobody even thought about that, let alone try to take action to stop it. Is there anything that the United Nations can do to stop the Chinese atrocities against the people of East Turkestan, or shall we leave it to the God at the final judgment? The Western Turkestan, which was occupied by the former Soviet Union, became independent after the collapse of Soviet Union. But we East Turkestani people, which also must be independent, is still under the control of brutal Chinese regime. We need the support of the United Nations. Freedom for East Turkestan. Freedom for East Turkestan. China out of East Turkestan. China out of East Turkestan. China, shame on you. Li Peng, shame on you. Hey, shameless Deng Xiaoping, shame on you. Shameless Wang Mo, shame on you. Freedom for Tibet. Freedom for Tibet. Freedom for Tibet. Freedom for Tibet. China out of Tibet. China out of Tibet. China out of Tibet. China out of Tibet. China out of Mongolia. China out of Mongolia. China out of Inner Mongolia. China out of Inner Mongolia. Thank you very much. And we are planning to submit our petition to the United Nations after this speech. Thank you. Thank you very much.
World, we are not alone. We can continue our struggle. We will prevail. There will be a day when there is a free East Turkestan that will stand as a co-equal neighbor to Tibet. One free Tibet, one free East Turkestan. And now, Mr. Baselli is here to represent the Trans Radical Party. Please.
His unshackled legs carried him off towards a hill of flour growing at the side of the road. As he stooped and cut the flour gently with his tiny little uncuffed hands, the answers came from the smile on his face as he slowly breathed in the aroma of the sunny April afternoon. And I knew then standing in the shadow of the giant. I'd like to reflect on,
yes, I do.
as best I could, about my experience in the Tibet hunger strike. One of the worst experiences I had was the last demonstration by 400 Tibetans outside the group.
Oh, great, please, everyone just can. Oh, thank you very much. I thought you did.
Okay. Okay, ready? Get set, go! Oh.
I'm looking for you
Okay, good. Free East Turkistan?
Yeah, ready? Hello, hello, yeah.
Free East Turkistan!
Yeah!
Free East Turkistan!
Yeah!
Free East Turkistan!
Free East Turkistan!
Free Tibet now!
Free Tibet now!
Free East Turkistan now!
Free East Turkistan now!
Free Tibet now!
Free Tibet now!
China out of Tibet!
China out of Tibet!
China out of East Turkestan!
China out of East Turkestan!
One China, one East Turkestan!
One China, one East Turkestan!
One China, one Tibet!
One China, one Tibet!
China out of East Turkestan!
China out of East Turkestan!
China out of Tibet!
China out of Tibet!
China out of East Turkestan!
China out of East Turkestan!
And China out of Tibet!
China out of Tibet!
Long live East Turkestan!
Long live East Turkestan!
Long live Tibet!
Long live Tibet!
Long live East Turkestan!
Long live East Turkestan!
Long live Tibet!
Long live Tibet!
Long live Tibet!
Long live Tibet!
Long live East Turkestan!
Long live East Turkestan!
Was that Taiwan would send a high-ranking minister, but not the president. And the PRC would send the president, and the others would send their president. And the international organizations that Taiwan is in, the more opportunities there may be someday to have that happen. And finally, it's in our interest because it seems to me that here we are, a country whose one fundamental objective in foreign policy is to encourage the expansion of democratic opportunities for Taiwan to participate in areas where the PRC is participating so that they do have greater opportunities to interchange. It would at the same time give Taiwan, same as our arms sales program, greater confidence for the day when they do sit down with the PRC to talk about
analytical and succinct statement for the U.S. approach, and I think we probably should encourage the administration to think more in terms of helping Taiwan to help the U.S. As you mentioned, that it is in the U.S. interest to support Taiwan in the international organizations. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Larry Mitch to speak. Larry has been a familiar face over here with the Taiwan Roundtable. I'm sure many of you recognize him, just as Ambassador Balaki is. He is a specialist in Asian affairs with the Congressional Research Service of the Library of Congress, and he has a doctorate from the Georgetown University in history. And he specializes in the U.S. security policy in East Asia and Western Pacific. As well as international political conditions of the countries of the region and foreign policy development within the region. He is not only an expert on Taiwan, he is also expert on Japan and Korea, and if you're interested in Korean affairs, you will see a lot of articles that he has written and report on Korea too. In addition to his report published by the Congressional Research Service, he has written and spoken very widely, and he has been interviewed very frequently by East Asian and U.S. media outlets, and also by the Voice of America. He's also a senior advisor on East Asia to the former Political Risk Service Group, and is now also a consultant to Water and Economic.
Remember that my remarks today are personal views and don't necessarily represent any views officially of my own organization, the Congressional Research Service, or for that matter, any other branch of the U.S. government. Well, we've all been watching the summit this week, and I've been particularly interested in what has been said about Taiwan and what has been reported about Taiwan, including the remarks by the President yesterday in his press conference. As I came into watching the summit with the view that revision of the historical textbooks and attitudinal changes. Dorfer pointed out in his article the younger people in Taiwan.
A lot of deep thought and interaction, and we always have time later for questions and answers. So we'll welcome comment from the floor. Next, I would like to present to you Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, the 1996 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, co-laureate with Bishop Bell. And Dr. Horta has been in the forefront for human rights and self-determination issues and the movement around the globe. And he supports Taiwan's human rights, Taiwan's international representation, and particularly when everybody else is talking about Taiwan going through other channels and the peripheral organizations, Dr. Horta supports a certain way for Taiwan to get into the United Nations. Now, you all know that Dr. Horta was awarded for his dignified work, his championship for human rights. And he has been hopping all over the world. He just came back from Africa, and we weren't sure that he was going to be able to make it today. He just arrived this morning earlier, and he will be leaving soon before we come through the issue. But let me just briefly mention, because I think most of you know his credentials already. He is the current special representative of the National Council of Mobile Resistance of East Timor. I'm sure you all know what that is. And he's the executive director, lecturer of the diplomacy training program at the law school, law faculty of the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. And in the past, he had, for more than 10 years, he had been the permanent representative to the United Nations for the East Timorese National Affairs. Let's welcome Dr. Horta.
I'm the only one who is not an expert on Taiwan. I having heard the introduction on the two previous speakers, I could ask myself, what am I going to add to their solid, sound knowledge of U.S. policies in Taiwan? My interest stems from my very tiny country, East Timor. We had many people of Taiwanese background living there for generations. I probably was the only Timorese at the time to study the Chinese language, more precisely Mandarin, through the courtesy of the Chinese Consulate in Delhi. I did not study Taiwanese at the time. Portugal, East Timor was a Portuguese colony, and Portugal maintained relations with Taiwan, not with People's Republic. And my interest is also stems from my concern for human rights. If we say that human rights know no boundaries, human rights are not matters of domestic jurisdiction of a country. Human rights are a matter of international responsibility. Then we must also face the fact that we cannot ignore the human rights, the fate, the very survival of 21 million people in Taiwan. But also, as we saw in the last few months, in this interdependent world, where events in one island, in one country, has chain reaction across the globe. Anyone who is not concerned about peace and stability in Taiwan, in its relation with China, in the region, certainly is in the world if the situation in South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, gets even more tension, China-Taiwan relations. So, I went to Washington and reading the New York Times, I read an interesting item that the Republic of the UN, and yet the 21 million people. So, in that context, I can volunteer some of my opinion, because I also have followed almost every year Taiwan's attempts to get a seat at the UN. My belief is that certainly, of course, a country believes that if it does not have a full membership in the UN, it is considered to be a pariah state. Taiwan getting together with few countries in the Central American region and some others that actually do not count that much on the observer status in the UN system as a honestly to developing many countries. And I believe, therefore, that the need before peaceful reunification with China, because